So I want to welcome everyone to this webinar. My name is Alice Rothschild, and I'm on the steering committee of Jewish Voice for Peace Health Advisory Council. And I just want to make it clear that we are recording this. So if you don't want your name or your face on a recording, please turn off your camera and change your name to some other name. So I'm very excited about this webinar. It's called The Gazafication of the West Bank, and it's a report from Diana Butu. We have a number of co-sponsors that I would like to recognize: the American Friends Service Committee, U.S. Palestine Global Mental Health Network, Healthcare Workers for Palestine Salt Lake City, Voices from the Holy Land, and the Institute for the Critical Study of Zionism. And we received promotional support from the Institute for Middle East Understanding and from the Jewish Voice for Peace Academic Advisory Council. So we do a webinar. We've been doing them every 4 to 8 weeks since the genocide in Gaza began. And the format of today's webinar is that Diana's going to speak for 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A using the chat function. And I will be asking some questions myself and also then mostly taking questions from the chat. And Rachel Rubin is my co-host here, and she will also be monitoring the chat. We ask that everyone stay muted at all times. Please keep your questions on topic and respectful, and don't write treatises on the chat because we won't read them. And if anyone has escaped figuring out the chat at this point in modern life, if you hover at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat function and you click it and the chat box comes up. Be sure it says it's going to everyone and type in a question or short comment. As I've mentioned, this webinar is being recorded. I just realized I don't have my second page. So let me just bring up the rest of what I needed to say since it's not on the piece of paper I had. 1 second. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is to introduce Diana. I've known Diana Butu for many years, and she's just an incredible person. She's a lawyer who previously served as a legal advisor to the Palestinian negotiating team and was part of the team that assisted in the successful litigation of the wall before the International Court of Justice. She frequently comments on Palestine for international news media outlets such as CNN and BBC. She's a political analyst for Al Jazeera International and is a regular contributor to the Middle East magazine. She maintains a law practice in Palestine focused on international human rights law. So the screen is all yours, Diana, and we really look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alice, for hosting me. And thank you to everybody for attending. I don't have any formal remarks prepared because everything has been changing and happening so quickly. As soon as you write some remarks, there are some changes that are happening on the ground. And so instead, I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about both what's happening in Gaza, because I think it's really important for us not to take our eyes off of Gaza, and then pivot back to the West Bank and also look at Jerusalem. And I also think it's important to talk about the place in which I live, which is in Haifa, and to mention what's going on with Palestinians there, because it's different. It's very, very, very different, but I do think that it's part of a bigger issue and a bigger plan and a bigger focus on Zionism. So let's focus on Gaza. You know, now we are looking at a Gaza Strip that doesn't look at all the way that it did 21 months ago. Much of Gaza has been flattened, including major cities like Rafah. You'll recall back in March and then April and then May of 2024, there were the big campaigns of all eyes on Rafah. Well, today in Rafah, and Rafah was declared the red line by President Biden. Well, that red line was not only crossed, it was crossed so badly that in Rafah today, you can barely, for miles, see a single building that remains standing. So Rafah, which was one of the largest districts, not just a city, a large district, is no longer standing any longer. And the same is true in the north, in Beit Hanun, where you can stand in places like Sderot on the Gaza envelope, look over using binoculars. They have some binoculars there that you can put 5 shekels in and look out on, and you won't be able to see a single standing house. And so, there's a lot of Israeli tourism to go and actually look through those binoculars to see that there isn't a single standing building. So in total, we've seen that roughly 80% of Gaza's population has now been shoved into between 18 to 20% of Gaza's land. And for those of you who know Gaza, who have been to Gaza or read up about Gaza, you'll know that this is already the most densely populated place on Earth. Now imagine that that has shrunk even further to the point where so much of the population is now down to between 18 to 20% of the land. Just over the course of the past couple of days, the army has even issued orders saying that people aren't even allowed into the water. And we're experiencing a very drastic heat wave, which means that people who are even living in tents can't even go out into the water just to be able to get to cool off. I say all of this because the bombs haven't stopped throughout all of this. And in addition to all that we're talking about, by my estimation, and I lost count, there have been at least 13 times that people have been forced to evacuate, evacuation orders. So people are effectively being treated as human ping pong balls. Evacuate, 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 evacuate. And that can only be done by the healthy. That means that if you're elderly, if you're weak, if you're sick, if you're young, that's just simply not feasible. And the Israelis know that. And in those evacuated spaces, there's nothing there for them. There aren't hospitals. There aren't schools. There aren't health facilities like laboratories. There aren't food supplies. And so by all accounts, by every single one of the accounts that I've been hearing from friends, this is hell. Add to that since March the 2nd of this year, the Israeli government hasn't allowed for the free flow of food supplies into Gaza, which has meant that the only food supplies that are coming in through this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which there's nothing humanitarian about it. And to date, over 750 Palestinians have been killed just trying to access food. These are Palestinians who are gunned down by the militias and by the Israeli army. They're gunned down as they're trying to get food. So the choice for Palestinians today is death by starvation, or death by bombs, or death by being gunned down. There's no other, there's no other, it's just death. Those are your choices. Um, my friends, friends that I know, I had a video call just the other day with a very good friend who he was joking with me. He said, "You're not going to recognize me. I lost 15 kilograms." And we were joking back and forth, um, and I finally saw him on video, I didn't recognize him. And his daughter, who is 12, looks like an 8-year-old. And this is a family that's, relatively well off. The hospitals are barely functioning. Medicine is not making it in. I mean, you know all of this. But I think it's really important for us to understand that what the Israelis have been doing has been deliberately targeting the medical system, deliberately targeting the food supply system, deliberately targeting the infrastructure. It's all very deliberate. And why do I mention this? Because first, because I don't want anybody to take their eyes off of Gaza. It is very important for us to keep our focus on Gaza and to keep pushing for the weapons to stop and push for the United States to stop sending the weapons are being replenished practically every 2 weeks. And without that flow of weapons, Israel just can't do it. But the same practices that are being done in Gaza are being transported to the West Bank, but on a much smaller and slower scale. And so what's happening in the West Bank? The first thing is, you'll recall that one of the things that the Israeli government did early on was demonize UNRWA. This was in Gaza, like they had we have this file, which they've never proven, this file on UNRWA, and they demonized UNRWA. Well, surprise, surprise, they've also demonized UNRWA in the West Bank. And in demonizing UNRWA in the West Bank, they passed 2 pieces of legislation that have effectively banned UNRWA. So one bans UNRWA from being able to operate in areas under Israel's quote-unquote sovereign control. So that means Jerusalem. But then the second piece says that no Israeli official can coordinate with UNRWA. And so if that isn't bad enough, what the Israelis have then done is they've taken it a step further. And that's why we've seen the systematic destruction of the refugee camps in the West Bank, beginning in the north and then progressively kind of going down to the south. They haven't gone all the way south yet. The Israeli army has been systematically dismantling the refugee camps and saying that these camps will never go back and people will never go back to those houses. And remember how I said that they've been targeting the infrastructure in Gaza? Same thing in the West Bank. To date, there are the camps that have been targeted are Jenin Refugee Camp, Tulkarem Refugee Camp, Nur Shams Refugee Camp, and then a couple of other refugee camps that are a little bit further, Tabas Refugee Camp, and a few others. And so to date, there are about 50,000 Palestinians who have been made homeless since it's been about 1.5 years now. And over the course of this period of being made homeless, it's not just being made homeless, it's that that there's no prospect that they will ever be able to rebuild their homes at all. Add to this that the Israeli government has accelerated its own process of of home demolitions, not just of within the refugee camps itself, but other home demolitions as well. These are homes that they declared to be illegal that are in Area C. And so there are a number of villages that have been completely wiped off the map, completely and totally wiped off the map, 4 at least that we know of. And so this is so increasingly we're seeing that Palestinians are being like corralled into these, spaces, smaller spaces, smaller spaces, smaller spaces. Remember how I mentioned that Palestinians in Gaza, the 80% of the land has now been taken away, and Palestinians are being shoved into between 18 to 20% of the Gaza Strip. Same is happening, but again, on a smaller scale, where people are being corralled into these smaller areas, smaller areas, smaller areas, smaller areas. With at least four that we know of, communities entirely wiped off the map, and the 50,000 who've been made homeless are being pushed into places like Jenin, places like Tulkarem, into the bigger cities with really difficult ways of absorbing them. Many of them are still living in mosques. Many of them are living with family members. Some of them have managed to find houses that they can rent. But again, this is this is just totally untenable and not sustainable. At the same time, the other thing that we are seeing is that there has been a very deliberate policy on the part of the Israeli government to let the settlers, and these are settler militias, by the way. These are not just settlers. Like these are full out militias to go wild. So the first thing was that back in October of 2023, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's the Minister of Public Security, announced that he was going to loosen the rules or make the rules a little bit more lax for people to own guns. That's all Israel needs, is people owning more guns, right? Like anybody who's been here knows that there's just like everywhere you look, people are like carrying weapons. And so within a very quick period, there were 150,000 more people carrying weapons. And so I have no way of knowing exactly where they are, but I suspect that many of them are the settlers. And so the settlers have taken it upon themselves, of course, with the aid of the army. I don't want to make them out that like they're like rogue, because they're not. With the aid of the army, and of course with the aid of the state, because it's all one mechanism. The settlers have been attacking Palestinians and Palestinian property, and they do this very deliberately. They have a strategy where they map out the areas, like the furthest area from the Palestinian village, and wherever the last house is, that's their target. They want that last house to be moving inwards, so that again, Palestinians are concentrated, corralled, but back into these smaller spaces. And there have been about, I think it's 2,300 such attacks since October of 2023, where we've seen that many Palestinians have been either attacked, their properties attacked, and in some cases killed. And just on Friday afternoon, even a U.S. citizen, a 20-year-old, unfortunately, a 20-year-old who came here to visit his mom and his younger brother. He's from Tampa. He came to visit his mom and his younger brother. He was attacked by some settlers, and I mean really brutally attacked. And after he was so brutally attacked, they even prevented ambulance and the paramedics from reaching him for over 2 hours, some say 3. By the time they did reach him, it was practically too late. His brother actually had to lift him. His younger brother had to lift him. And by the time he reached an ambulance, it was a little bit too late. He didn't even make it to the hospital. He was just buried today. And so we are seeing this pattern of the settlers trying to take over more land, and they're doing it. That we see them attacking Palestinian property, and they're doing it. We see them attacking Palestinians, and they're doing it. And if you know anything about this place, you'll know that there is no law and order, that the law and order is against Palestinians. It's never against the Israeli settlers, because it's an ecosystem where the settlers are allowed to do this. In fact, they're encouraged to do this. And soldiers can do as they please. So throughout all of the, and in the meantime, we're also hearing that ministers within the Israeli government, in addition to all of the statements of incitement, which are just crazy. I was going through some of them today, like everything from, nuking Gaza as an option to flatten Gaza to, you name it. There's some crazy stuff that they say. We also see that for many of these ministers, that they don't really care about Gaza. The real prize for them is the West Bank. And they're using this opportunity of Gaza to try to go after the West Bank and to try to build and expand more settlements than they have during this intervening period. They have, during this period, they have been building, they have been expanding. As somebody who goes to the West Bank a lot, it's interesting for me to be seeing just even the signs that in the past, where I could see that the signs were like mostly advertising to the religious communities. Today it's not. Today it's advertising to a very secular community. It says, here, you can be a few minutes outside of Tel Aviv. You can have a bigger house. You can have a yard. That's the way that they're pitching these settlements today. The other thing I forgot to mention is that for Palestinians, in addition to the settler attacks, in addition to the army attacks, in addition to the construction of settlements, in addition to the demolition of houses, in addition to the demolition of the refugee camps, the Israelis have put Palestinians effectively under lockdown. There are about 900 checkpoints now. It's practically impossible to get in and out of Palestinian cities and towns. We've like these apps now that we are using to maneuver ways to get in and out. We have I can't even describe all the different, we've WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups and you name it, just to be able to maneuver how to get in and out. And it's actually quite dangerous to try to maneuver your way in and out. And oftentimes it's you simply can't. Like, for example, when I go down to Ramallah, I'm the privileged, I hold an Israeli passport. I can get in, but getting out, I usually have to plan that it's going to take me all day for what should normally be an hour and a half ride, because you're just in this endless loop of driving. And again, I'm the privileged who can get out. The vast majority cannot. So that's what's happening in the West Bank. In Jerusalem, the situation is also dire. There's been everything from, it was called the Al-Aqsa flood, and yet nobody's able to go to Al-Aqsa. The Al-Aqsa has been off limits to many Palestinians, increasing restrictions on Palestinians to be able to pray there. The pattern of home demolitions is continuing, particularly in Silwan. It's been accelerated. And again, these are communities that really nobody is paying attention to, because it's just like one fire after another, and again, nobody's looking. And then lastly, Palestinians in 48. And this is where Alice asked me the question when we were in, quote unquote, the green room before before starting. And she asked me, what's it like living here? And I don't know how to, I always tell her, I don't know how to answer the question because it's like living in a hellscape. Because I live surrounded by people who were either Nakba deniers or Nakba apologists or who carried out the Nakba. And then now, I mean, that was before, now they are genocide apologists. Or people who carried out the genocide. And there's a certain there's certain scariness to this where you can be walking down the street and see somebody who's like fully tattooed with the dreadlocks and thinking, oh yeah, this is cool, this is going to be a left-winger, and then you look at the back of their Vespa or motorcycle and you see a sticker that says finish them, or you see a sticker that says time to settle Gaza now, or a sticker that says flatten Gaza, or another one that says there are no innocents in Gaza. Or you have conversations with neighbors who, when you talk about kids in Gaza, they say, and kids die in Gaza, they say, so what? This is the price of war. Or when you talk about starvation, they, on the one hand, either deny it, or then on the other hand say that it just has to happen. So you're in this thing. So it's its own level of, as I call it, hellscape, because I have a little boy. He's 11, and there's no way to carve a bubble for him. There's no way to carve a bubble for him. There's no place that you can create a little bubbly world and say, all right, you're going to be immune, and I'm going to teach you the world. I'm going to teach you all the things about justice and justice. Da, da, da. He is forever going to live in this hellscape. And he's going to live in a hellscape where he's going to have to maneuver the same thing that my late father maneuvered. My father survived the Nakba. And I just don't know I just don't know how to, I don't know how to describe it. I just don't know how to describe it beyond that. There's no bubble that can be created. There's no bubble. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to open it for questions. And
Thank you for what is a devastating update on something that we've been following very closely. In terms of going forward, could you speak to the Hague Group meeting on July 15th? Do you think this is anything more than rhetoric? Is there any, what should we be doing? In a country where, synagogues are hosting real estate marketing, advertising, summer homes in the West Bank, which they call Judea and Samaria. Can you comment on that?
look, anything that's going to shed light and that's going to try to hold Israel to account. All of that is good. I'm not so cynical that I think that nothing's going to. I do think that all of the drops in the bucket are going to add up. I really do. And one of the things that is really encouraging to me is not only the stuff that happened on campus, on the U.S. campuses. And there's something really important about the U.S. campuses. Unlike Vietnam, where it's like U.S. troops were involved and there were body bags, this isn't U.S. troops, this is U.S. money. This is U.S. policy. And there's a big difference. All of that is really important. And but it's going to take time. We don't have the time, but it's going to take time. And increasingly, I am seeing that there is a shift, and I am seeing that people are becoming more aware. Unfortunately, again, we just don't have that time. And Netanyahu and the Israeli government and the Israeli people are banking on the fact that we don't have time. And I actually have to say something about the Israeli people. The Israelis now are totally like they want this over. Not because they love us, again, not because they love us, and not because they recognize that it's genocide, because they don't, but because they're tired of their kids coming back in body bags, and also because they don't really see what the long-term vision is. But so all of this, it helps, all of it helps, all of it helps. And keep at it. I mean, I can't tell you what to do in your specific areas because I don't live there, and you can, but all of it helps. And I'm not so cynical as to be discouraged. And I think that we don't have the luxury of being cynical. We just don't. We really don't. We don't have that luxury.
You used the word corralled or concentrated before. People are now talking about concentration camps in Rafah, and I don't know if there's a similar thing going on the West Bank. Can you speak to the language and to the reality?
Oh, okay. So, I should speak to that. So in the place where this young man was killed is a town called Sinjid. Let me see if I can pull up some of the pictures. And there is something really alarming about this, because, hold on just a second, because it really, really is quite alarming. And oh no, I won't be able to show it then. It's no more. I'm going to show you, and you might be able to see it on the screen. Do you all see that?
It's out of focus, but we can kind of see it. Yeah.
Do you see what that is? Like a big fence?
Yeah.
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 Do you see this one?
Again, not well focused, but
All focused. This area, this is the middle, where what they're attempting to do is fence in these areas. So it's like very clearly fencing in these cities where you're going to need a permit to get in, a permit to get out. I don't know what else to call it. I really don't know what else to call it. In Rafah, the model that they were talking about, the concentration camp that they were talking about, is for the quote unquote aid, right? So they wanted to be able to flatten the area, bring people in, and then distribute it. It's like, I mean, I don't know what language more, I don't know what more language needs to be used. I really don't know what else to use in terms of language. I really don't. In the West Bank, the reason I was using the term corralled is because these are bigger cities. So Jenin is quite a large city. Tulkarem is quite a large city. And so it's that they are being like pushed out of the camps and they're being corralled into. And same with this place, Sinjid, they're being pushed in and fenced off. Yeah.
are they particularly destroying the camps versus the cities because they want to destroy the concept of refugees having rights? Is that the deal?
They want to destroy the camps, and they're doing it one by one.
In the effort to destroy the concept of refugees.
Absolutely.
Okay. And some of us have worked in the Balata refugee camp. What's the status of Balata? Do you know?
They haven't yet gone after it. I suspect they will.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Let me see. There's some talk here, questions about talking to, I mean, this is not really your job, but talking to people in the US who are not there yet and understanding the genocide. Do do you have any, and this could also be true of people in Israel, how do people who understand the consequences of Zionism talk to other people who are, liberal-minded but don't get it? Do you have any thoughts on that in your whole experience? Because we all have family and we have friends, and it can be a really tough sell.
So I said this for a very long time. Behind every anti-Zionist is a very, very, very patient. Sorry, behind every anti-Zionist is a very patient person who very gently brought them along.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Especially the ones who used to be Zionists and then became anti-Zionists.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we don't always have time, but there's very, very, very patient Palestinians who have taken people along in order to get them to see the light.
Mm-hmm.
Zionism is one hell of a drug. It really is. It became it replaced Judaism as religion, as the religion of the Jews. I mean, that's the problem with it, is that it became so easy to latch onto, and it's going to take some undoing. It really takes a lot of energy, and yeah.
So there's a question about talking more about what's going on in Jerusalem, like Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan. Are there cases in the courts that have any legal recourse, or they all get, decided in the wrong direction? Or
there are the Israeli courts are how it's like a house of cards. So none of them get decided in favor of Palestinians. They just don't. So it's all just a delay tactic, delay tactic, delay tactic, delay tactic, in the hopes that there is political pressure or a political decision. So even in the case of the Al-Qurt family, it's just delay, 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 delay. Nothing ever goes the way of Palestinians, nothing ever. So yeah, so there's nothing really there. And there never will be. There never will be, including all of the towns that are and villages that are in Area C. All of them, it's the same. That's the whole tactic. The legal strategy is just to buy time. And incidentally, for those who, I don't know how much you know this, the person who started the NGO that goes after these Palestinian towns is Smotrich, who's now the Minister of Finance. So he's the guy who literally started the NGO that is going after all of these small towns like Khan al-Ahmar and so on. And that's why all of these small places are now mired in litigation. So what's happened is that while we try to buy time, they try to push the courts to demand that the state implement its decisions. And when you're the Minister of Finance, you have a little bit of clout.
mm-hmm.
So you can see how that whole system is working.
For folks who are still not quite clear about A, B, and C, can you just describe what C is?
So Area A is, so let me back up a little bit. The West Bank and Gaza Strip together make up only 22% of historic Palestine. That's it. And when Oslo was signed some almost 32 years ago, it was signed as being temporary and was supposed to end in 1999. Under that temporary, supposed to end in 1999 agreement, the West Bank was divided into 3 areas. Area A is the smallest of the areas. It makes up 18% of the West Bank, so 18% of the 22%. Okay? And yet it has the highest concentration of Palestinians. So if you think of what the Zionist strategy is, get rid of the people, hold on to the land. So Area A has 80% of the Palestinian population, concentrated on 18% of the land. Area B is the second largest area, second smallest or second largest, whatever, middle. And that is 22% of the 22%. So Area A and Area B combined make up 40% of the West Bank. And that together have roughly 95% of the Palestinian population of the West Bank. Okay? That leaves Area C, which is 60%. And what's the population? Very small, 5% of the population, Palestinian population. And so Area A is supposedly fully under Palestinian Authority control. I say supposedly because every single Area A, each of them is an island, and each of them is surrounded by an Area C. And so even if you're the president, you need permission to go from one area A to the next Area A. So it's supposedly under full Palestinian Authority control, but there's no such thing as full control. They don't control the airspace, they don't control the water, they don't control the natural resources like the underground resource, none of that. Area B, the Palestinian Authority is in charge of the schools, but that's it. And in Area C, it's full Israeli control. The home demolitions that I'm talking about, not the ones that are in the camps, the other ones that I'm talking about are in Area C. And so people who live in Area C, they need to apply to get an Israeli permit to build their house. The approval rate for getting an Israeli permit is an astonishing 1%. So of the 100 people who apply to get a building permit, 1 out of 100 will get that building permit. And I think over the past 15 years, it's been 0 out of 100. The approvals are granted by the Israeli Settler Council. So it's the fox that's guarding the hen house. And so as a result, people end up building without a permit. Because they build without a permit, you then have the Regavims. This is the Smotrich, the current Minister of Finance, who established an NGO. And he established an NGO to go after these small communities and to demand that the state destroy these homes. And so that's what he's been doing. So many of these home demolitions, again, not the ones that are in the refugee camps, but the others have been the result of this Minister of Finance going after these small little communities and to demand that the state demolish them. So that's ABC. You're muted, Alice.
Can you comment on whatever extent you're able to do in terms of legal work in the West Bank, if at all, and how you may be working in the arena of international law, recognizing, of course, that both Israel and the US completely ignore international law and what virtually the entire rest of the world agrees on.
So what does the legal work? So the legal work that I do in the West Bank is exactly what I just described, which is trying to push back against the home demolition. So using the only system that they recognize is the Israeli legal system. So the whole point is to try to delay. The Israelis do not recognize the application of international law at all in the West Bank. They don't recognize it when it comes to land. They don't recognize it when it comes to political prisoners. They don't recognize it, period. And so while the arguments are always raised, it's always sort of very summarily dismissed, but we insist on raising the arguments, and yeah, that's it.
Do you think it has an impact? Do you think that changes the world opinion? What?
You have to raise it, because if you don't raise it, you're kind of letting them get away with it, one. And then two, you can build up the case that the Israeli courts are not the appropriate forum. That's how the whole case before the ICJ began.
Okay.
Is that they said, that the Israeli courts are never going to rule in favor of Palestinians, because you have this whole breadth of cases where they just simply don't.
Right. Can you comment about the dramatic increase in Palestinian prisoners in the West Bank and ways we could be advocating on prisoner issues?
Yes. So since October of 2023, we actually don't even know how many prisoners there are. It used to be that we would get the statistics from the Israeli government, but we don't know. The last time that we got some statistics, we were only given the statistics of the prisoners who were from the West Bank. We have no idea how many are being held from Gaza. And there was a petition that was put forward to demand to know how many are being held in Gaza, and the court denied the petition. So the last time where there was a freedom of information request, it was something like 23,000. That's a lot. We always thought 10,000. Here's the important thing to know. People are being held without charge, without trial. This includes 55 journalists who are being held without charge, without trial, including 2 who were just picked up 2 days ago, Nasser Laham, and another journalist named Mujahid. What we do know is that all of the prisoners are being tortured, all of them. All of them are being starved, because this was a policy that actually even predates October of 2023, when the Minister of Public Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, when he was appointed Minister of Public Security back in January of 2023, he said, I'm going to make sure that this is no longer a country club. And he started to put into place measures to make sure that prisoners were, as he put it, suffered more. So everything from taking away bread to making sure they don't get showers to you name it. This is from January of 2023. And it's only gotten worse with time. So we generally don't know the numbers. We know that the conditions are terrible. There has been a drastic rise in the number of children who have been picked up, and a dramatic rise in the number of people who are being held without charge, without trial. And look, there's something else to note. The military system is a kangaroo court. Even if they're charged, most of these trials are done with secret evidence. Or the person's convicted based on, the testimony of some, whatever, like the evidence of either a confession by torture or the statements of somebody from the Shin Bet. And so these are the kangaroo these are kangaroo courts. And I think it's really important for us to keep pushing back on this, that these are not normal trials, and that Israel has the highest rate of incarceration. Yeah, it's huge. Like 1 out of every 2 men has spent time in an Israeli prison. That's a lot. It's a lot.
Okay. 2 more questions. We talk about the genocide in Gaza. Do you think that we can say in the West Bank that there's a slow genocide, or what kind of language should we be using to talk about this horrific reality?
I'm trying to remember, there's a medical org, and I can't remember the name now, that they actually, I can't remember the name of it now. I'll find it and I'll send it to you, Alice. Um, they actually began before October of 2023 and their focus was on the West Bank, and they were calling it genocide in the West Bank before October of 2023. She's a doctor, and she had covered, it's a group of doctors, but this one doctor, she had analyzed the elements of genocide, and she was saying there was a slow genocide that was taking place in the West Bank. This is ages ago.
Is this the
And
Lemkin Institute by any chance?
no, it's not Lemkin. I'm drawing a blank. It's a group of
Okay.
doctors. Um, but anyway, and then, and then October happens. And so, yeah, I don't,
You have no
um,
trouble with us using that word for the West Bank. Okay. So my last question, since we're all sitting here feeling suicidally depressed, is
no.
what strategies do you think are most important for people in the U.S., since it's our tax dollars and our politicians who are completely out of their minds that are currently doing this? Um, what are the most important things that we as activists should be doing, in your opinion?
One, don't stay quiet. Please don't stay quiet. Two, a lot of like now the tide has shifted when it came to the media, but I don't think that this could have been possible without the complicity of media. And the tide only shifted with media after Israel broke the ceasefire on March the 18th and after the starvation that began on March the 2nd. Before that, they were totally complicit. Really, you don't. How do you bomb 36 hospitals and get away with it? They covered. I was just going back in like reading old coverage. On one day, Israel bombed 2 hospitals, and the media instead was covering Netanyahu's prostate surgery. 2 hospitals, one day, and they covered his prostate surgery. So, these don't stay quiet, go after the media. I'm sure there's other things that you can go push back against this whole anti-Semitism. And, you're Jewish. You have a greater voice in saying it than I do. I can't say
Hmm.
these things.
What about boycott?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean,
Okay.
that's given, right? That's
Okay. Just putting it in there for everybody to hear it.
let's say that's like that was ages ago.
Assumed, right?
Yeah, the BDS goes without saying. Um, and but really don't stay quiet and don't get depressed, right? Look, my mom always says this, and this is the note I'll end on. My mom always says there's a reason that there's a choir. It's because when you need to pause and take a breath, somebody else will keep singing. Okay.
That's very lovely metaphor. Well, I want to thank you so much for this incredible presentation. I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of things. We do urge folks to check out our website, jvphealth.org, and sign up to join and get all the updates and things that we do. This has all been recorded, and everyone who signed up will get a message with the recording. It'll also be posted on the website. And just to remind people that every week we are curating an urgent medical update on Gaza. Generally comes out on Saturday if I'm totally functional. And it gets posted on our website and on the email list and on social media. And it's a very good way to stay totally up to date on what's going on. And we do other advocacy and writing and urgent actions and things like that. Our next webinar is September 7th at 10 a.m. Pacific time with Sarah Ali and Mark Perlmutter. Sarah is one of the co-authors of the Lancet article that demonstrated the 41% undercount of the official death tally. And Mark Perlmutter is an orthopedist who describes himself as a humanitarian surgeon, and he's worked on surgical missions all over the world. And I will quote from an article that he wrote in Politico. We're used to working in disaster and war zones, of being on intimate terms with death and carnage and despair. None of that prepared us for what we saw in Gaza this spring. And I'm putting in the chat a link to that article and also a link to the Lancet article so that you can read them and sort of whet your appetite for what the webinar on September 7th is going to start out with. And we'll just listen to these two incredible people. And we also, as I said, invite you to become a more active member of the JVP Health Advisory Council. You don't have to be Jewish. And that is also a sign up on the website. You can say what interests you. And we're also sending out a feedback form that we actually look at all the answers and try to, incorporate that in our planning for the future. So please fill that out. And going forward, you can on our website let us know if you have any questions. So thank you, Diana, and thank you everyone for participating in this important conversation.
Thank you.
Take care.